Three very scary true lake camping horror stories. The lake was silent that night, too silent. Not the kind of silence that brings peace, but the kind that hangs in the air like a curse, humming in the bones of the earth. You know the one. The stillness that feels, watch. We came for clarity. A break. Jake and I, city-worn and soul-hungry, packed our bags and drove hours into the mountains. It was supposed to be a weekend to remember, a lake so clear it mirrored heaven, a sky so open it could swallow the past. But the deeper we drove, the more the trees began to lean inward, like ancient sentinels murmuring warnings too old for words. By the time we reached the shore, the sun was melting behind the tree line, bleeding orange and gold across the water. It looked like fire trapped under glass. Beautiful, yes, but unnatural. There was something in the stillness. A pressure. As if the air was waiting for something to happen. But we shrugged it off. Jake laughed as he unpacked the cooler. Man, this is paradise, he said, stretching wide, his red flannel wrinkled from the drive. We set up camp, lit a fire, and toasted marshmallows until the stars came out, sharp as knives in the ink-black sky. We didn't know that every flicker of firelight was drawing something closer. Watching. Measuring that night, sleep came late. I lay awake listening to the water, the wind, the small unnecessary noises of the forest. Then something snapped. Not a twig. Not an animal. A voice. A low, gravelly whisper, I know you're in there. Jake jolted upright, flashlight in hand. I froze. The footsteps circled the tent. Not hurried. Not cautious. Just confident. Like we were already caught. Like we'd already been chosen. Jake started to unzip the tent, but I grabbed his hand. Don't. Just wait. We sat like that for hours, every second stretching thin with fear. When morning finally broke, we stepped outside, breath fogging in the cool air. The camp was untouched. But the feeling, the dread, lingered like smoke after a fire. It clung to my clothes, soaked into my skin. We found the other camp 100 yards down the shoreline. Or what was left of it. Torn tents. Blood on rocks. A single sneaker, half buried in pine needles. Jake bent to pick up a broken plate. This wasn't an animal, he said. This is human. And then the scream. It ripped through the trees, a woman's voice, broken and raw. We ran. Branches tore at our clothes. The underbrush grabbed our legs. And there she was. Emily. Her jacket shredded, eyes wide with trauma. He killed my husband, she whispered. He's still out there. We brought her back to our camp, tried to pack quickly, but time had its own agenda. And so did he. He stepped out from the woods just as we finished loading the car. Wild-eyed. Grinning. Knife in hand. Jake grabbed a branch. I grabbed a rock. He lunged. The fight was chaos. Flesh and bone and fury. Jake screamed. I hit him. Emily screamed. The lake, silent as ever, watched. In the end, Jake held him off long enough for us to reach the boat and row. Emily sobbed. The man stood on the shore, watching, unmoving. And I knew we'd never outrun him. Not really. He found others. The second story was Lisa's. She told it to me years later, in a therapist's office with the door locked tight. Her eyes wouldn't meet mine until halfway through. It wasn't supposed to be scary, she said. It was just supposed to be peaceful. They went in a group, 6 friends, high school tight. The kind of bond you think can't break. They brought too much food, too many laughs. The first night was perfect. But the second night, something changed. They found handprints. On the tents. Small. Childlike. But no one brought a child. No one even passed a child on the trail. The ranger had said it was an abandoned route, untouched for years. Lisa thought someone was pranking them until they found the toys. A small doll, soaked in lake water. A wooden rattle, half buried in the dirt. A mobile made of teeth strung between 2 pine branches. They thought about leaving, but the path back had changed. It wasn't the same. Twists where there were none. Signs that didn't match, then people started vanishing. First, Jason. He went to pee behind a tree and never came back. Then, Maria, who walked down to the lake to rinse dishes and left the pot spinning in the current. They searched until nightfall, then huddled in one tent. That's when the singing started. High-pitched. Off-key. Like a child humming through shattered lungs. The melody crawled through their ears and burrowed into their dreams. Lisa said it sounded familiar. Like something her grandmother used to sing. But in reverse. By morning, there were only two left. Lisa and Derek. They ran until their legs bled. Found a road. A ranger. A return to civilization. But they left something behind in those woods. Or maybe something followed. Derek doesn't speak anymore. The third story is mine. It happened 10 years ago. I never told anyone until now. Because I needed to forget. But the lake never forgets. I went alone. That was my first mistake. Solitude can be beautiful. Or it can be a doorway. I pitched my tent on the northern edge of the lake, where the rocks form teeth along the shore. It was supposed to be an artist's retreat. Just me, a journal, and silence. But I forgot, some silences are hungry. The first night was fine. The second was not. I heard music. Old music. Like a crackling record played underwater. It came from across the lake. A cabin that hadn't been there before. I saw the light in the window. I heard the piano. And I went. I should have known better. The cabin wasn't real. Or maybe it was too real. Inside, dust moved in time with breath. A woman stood in the corner, back to me, humming. Her spine was too long. Her hair moved like it was underwater as she turned. Her face was mine. She smiled. I ran. Fell. Bled. Crawled back to camp. But the tent was gone. So was the shore. Just water. Endless water. I floated for what felt like years. Screaming. Crying. Praying. I woke up 3 days later, in my car, parked on the roadside. Mud on my boots. A scratch across my cheek. My journal was on the seat beside me. Every page filled. Not in my handwriting. The last line read, "You are the song now." This is a true story. He spoke to me from the woods. And I still hear him. It began, as most horrors do, with stillness. A quiet too perfect. Too complete. I had gone into the woods to find myself, to shake the city noise from my spirit. But the silence I found didn't cleanse me, it clung to me. A silence that listens back. I rented a remote cabin on the edge of a forgotten forest. No address. No neighbors. The kind of place you only find if something wants you to. I told people I needed to unplug. That I wanted to write, to think. But the truth was messier. Something inside me had broken, a grief that wouldn't move, a voice in my dreams that kept saying, "Come closer." I thought it was a metaphor. I thought I was just unraveling in metaphorical ways. The cabin was older than it should have been. Logs blackened like they'd once been burned, then rebuilt. A single chair on the porch. The keys were waiting under a stone, no lockbox, no welcome mat. As if the woods had accepted my offering and now waited for their part of the deal. The first 2 nights were uneventful. I wrote by candlelight, read dog-eared poetry, and listened to the wind thread through branches like fingers searching for something. But on the third night, I heard him. A voice. Low. Measured. Too human to be wind, too hollow to be a man. "Don't look at me," it said. I froze. The fire had died hours before, and the cabin creaked around me like it was breathing. The voice had come from outside, just beyond the window. I couldn't see anything but blackness pressed against the glass. I whispered to myself, reasoning. Sleep deprivation. A memory half awake. But my heart knew better. That wasn't a hallucination. That was a warning. I didn't sleep. I waited until morning and hiked into town, a 2-hour walk. I found a ranger. I told him about the voice. He didn't laugh. He didn't even blink. He just asked, "Did it speak your name?" "No," I said. "Good," he replied. "If it does, don't answer." I asked what he meant, but he just shook his head. "That forest holds echoes. Don't stay too long." But I had to. Not because of pride. Not because of money. I had to because something in me had already started changing. The voice had opened something, cracked a door that couldn't be closed. I returned to the cabin, not as a guest, but as someone summoned that night. The voice came again. "Closer, don't light the fire." I obeyed. "Don't look through the window." I closed my eyes. "Do you want to see where I live?" I didn't answer. The air grew thick. My breath fogged even indoors. Time moved strangely. I'd look at the clock and lose hours in thought. Or memory. Or maybe it wasn't mine. I dreamed of places I'd never been, of tunnels made of bone, of trees weeping blood that soaked into my skin like ink. One morning, I found a note on the table. Not in my handwriting. "You are listening now." I began to see shapes in the forest. Not shadows, silhouettes. Tall, distorted. They stood between the trees as if the bark bowed around them. Sometimes I'd blink and they'd be gone. Sometimes not. I stopped writing. I stopped sleeping. I stopped pretending I was alone. The forest didn't want me dead. It wanted me emptied. I began to hear my own voice calling from the woods. Begging. Pleading. Saying things I'd never said, but somehow believed. "Come help me. He's keeping me here. Don't leave me like this." One evening, the voice said, "Step outside." I did. The forest was glowing. Not with light, but with knowing. Everything alive pulsed with a rhythm I couldn't understand. I saw movement, dozens of them, circling just beyond clarity. And in the center stood a figure. Not cloaked. Not monstrous. Just familiar. Like an older version of myself, carved from rock. He smiled and said, "Now you hear what I hear." And I did. I heard everything. The way roots whisper when they move. The hum of decay. The screams buried in leaves. The laughter stitched into owl calls. The stories, oh, the stories are of every soul who'd wandered too far, who'd stepped off the trail thinking they were alone. I heard it all. The woods weren't haunted, they were fed. He told me, every voice you hear belongs to someone who answered back. That's when I knew. The forest doesn't chase. It calls. And once you listen, it never stops speaking. Even now, in the daylight, in the city, I hear them. In vents. In static. In the space between elevator doors. He spoke to me from the woods and I still hear him. Suspicious discovery in the tent. What we found wasn't human. It started with a smell. Faint, metallic, and wrong. We had been hiking for 2 days, off trail, by choice. 5 of us. College friends with something to prove. The kind of guys who laugh too loud, drink too much, and believe nature is just another playground to conquer. We called it the blackout trip. No phones, no GPS, no social media. Just the woods, the gear on our backs, and the illusion of control. By the second night, our boots were caked in mud and our nerves fraying. We found a small clearing just past a gnarled line of cedar trees. There was something strange about that space. Like it had been waiting. The trees bent in a semicircle, framing the site too perfectly, as if it had been cleared on purpose. But we were tired. Stupid. We pitched the tents without thinking. The first thing was the smell. Jack said it reminded him of rusted coins. Sam thought it was rotting meat. But it came and went, sharp one moment, gone the next. Like something sniffing us back. That night, I woke up choking. The air inside the tent had shifted. Heavier. Wetter. I sat up, gasping, the nylon walls pressing in like skin. It was dark. Not moondark. Deeper. Like the world had forgotten how to glow. That's when I heard it. A clicking sound. Soft, rhythmic. Coming from just behind the tent wall. I didn't speak. I didn't move. I just listened. The clicking circled the tent slowly, scraping against the ground with each pass. Not footsteps. Not paws. Something else. It dragged. When morning came, the tent reeked. All of our gear was soaked in something oily, bitter-smelling. There were no tracks. But the grass around us was flattened in a perfect spiral. We should have left instead. We laughed it off. Called it raccoons. Maybe a prank from another hiker. Anything to avoid the real thing curling beneath our thoughts. The next night, Jack disappeared. We found his boots outside his tent. One upright, one on its side. But no sign of Jack. No blood. No struggle. Just nothing. As if he'd been lifted straight out of the world. Sam wanted to hike out immediately. But the map didn't make sense anymore. Paths were wrong. Distances shifted. North became south. And the trees looked at us like they were waiting for us to understand. We stayed one more night. Out of fear, not bravery. 4 of us. No fire. No laughter. Just silence, and then the sound came back, but this time it was inside the tent. The clicking came from under my sleeping bag. I froze. I could feel the vibrations under my spine, like something small was burrowing up through the earth and into the fabric. I screamed. Tore open the tent. Fell out, gasping. The others rushed over. I swore I heard something moving beneath the dirt, like 1,000 insect legs skittering in reverse. We dug. Our fingers scraped rocks and roots, panic turning into frenzy. And then we hit something soft, not dirt. Flesh. It looked like leather, but pulsed faintly under the lantern light. Veined. Moist. Like a stretched hide stitched into the ground. We pulled back. More earth. More of it. A face, human-shaped but wrong. Too long. No eyes. No mouth. Just slits and folds and the suggestion of something watching from behind. We ran. The forest did not let us go. Branches reached for us like hands. Roots twisted into our path. The clearing appeared again, impossibly, as if we had never left. Our gear was gone. The tents folded. The smell now unbearable. Then we saw Jack. Or what used to be Jack. He stood in the center of the spiral, naked, drenched in that same oily substance. His skin moved. Twitched. As if something inside was crawling upward. He didn't speak. Just turned his head too far to the left and opened his mouth. Click. 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 The sound poured from him like language. That's when the tent moved, not from the wind. It breathed. The nylon stretching and releasing as if the fabric had lungs. We stared, too afraid to blink. Then it opened from inside the zipped flap. Something crawled out. Spindly. Long, translucent. It looked like skin without a skeleton, dragging itself forward with fingers that were too many and too long. It touched Jack. Melted into him, and Jack, or what was left of him, smiled. We scattered. 2 of us made it out. I don't speak to the other one. We don't need to. We know they didn't follow us out of the forest. Because they didn't have to. We brought them with us. Sometimes, when I sleep, I wake up choking. The air thick. And the tent, hanging in the back of my closet, the one I swore I threw away. Sometimes it moves, sometimes it clicks.